What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're looking at the best premium midfielders for our FPL Game Week 1 team. So I've set the price at 10 million or above. There's 6 players in that category: Son, Sterling, De Bruyne, Fernandes, Salah and Mane. So they're the 6 we're going to talk about. Their prospects, whether they should be in our Game Week 1 squads, etc. Give it a like if you enjoy it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and let's jump into it. Okay, don't worry. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about Mo Salah for obvious reasons, right? He's a pretty obvious pick for our teams, and if you're not going for him, that's absolutely fair enough. But we are talking about potentially the greatest of all time FPL player, because if he gets another 231 points or above, that's 5 seasons in a row that he's done it at Liverpool, and I don't really see any particular reason why he would slow down. Like, even with, you know, Jota in the team who can play in any of those kind of front 3 positions, left, right, or even in place of Bobby Firmino, I'm looking at how many matches Salah played. So he played in 37 last year for Liverpool, and he started in 34 of those, which kind of matches the previous season. So it was 33 starts the season before, it was 37 in his second season, and it was 34 starts in his first season. So he got as many starts last year as he did in his first season. So it doesn't look like slowing down at all. And I've even looked at the numbers, so you can see him on screen: 0.48 expected goals, 0.18 expected assists. So overall, that is 0.66, right? Expected goal involvement, which is his lowest of the last 4 seasons, but it's very close to his second season where he still did really well. So no signs of slowing up. Looks like a great captain option. The fixtures couldn't be any better. Like I've said before, if you don't have him, there must be a very good reason, or you just don't like Liverpool. Maybe you've got your own rules about how you set up your team, which is fine. But if you're looking to try and get like a super good rank and a start to the season that's decent, then he's got to be in our teams, right? Okay, so let's talk about Fantrax, who I have partnered with. If you want to play a draft game, this is the one to play. As I showed in the previous video, it's fully customizable. You can change the scoring system to whatever you want, really. You can make goals be worth more, worth less, etc. Tackles, interceptions, all that good stuff. The great thing is, they are giving you the opportunity to join a league with me, right? To join a draft league. It's going to run for 16 weeks, and the winner will get $500, right? All you need to do is create an account and be available to join the draft at 7 o'clock on Sunday. That's 7 o'clock UK time. That's when I'm going to run the draft. And to get involved, just leave a comment below and say that I've created my account on Fantrax. So you just have to create a free account. It doesn't cost you anything. And then I'll pick some winners at random. I'll get your email off you and stuff like that. Don't worry, you don't have to put your email down below. And then you can join my draft at 7 o'clock on Sunday, right? And the cool thing is, when you play, if you go and do your own draft with your friends, etc., like I said, you can do that completely free. There's so much info, right? So this is the team roster. So once I've got my team picked, obviously I haven't done it just yet for the league, it shows you literally everything, right? So you got fantasy points per game, you got games played, the minutes, clean sheets, etc., and all this good stuff that you can look through, right? So that's for your team based on your players. So obviously once you fill this out, it'll populate all that. But also, you can look at standings as well. So once there's all your teams in there, so you can do it with 6 teams, 7 teams, 8 teams, etc. I'm doing this league with 12. It'll give you all that same info for your own team, and then you can go and compare yourself to all your mates, your colleagues, however you set the league up as well. So it really is good. If you want to sign up and play, create your own drafts, link in the description below. And if you want to join mine, leave a comment below. I have created my free Fantrax account, and I'll pick some people at random. You can come and join me. 7 o'clock on Sunday, $500 up for grabs. Right, so I'm not looking to completely rush through this video, but obviously Salah didn't need too much discussion. I've already done a video on Bruno Fernandes, but just to quickly talk about him again, the fixtures are there, right? Leeds, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle is a pretty nice opening run. And I think there are some fixtures where you may consider captaining over Salah. To be fair, some people might even captain Fernandes against Leeds versus not captaining Salah against Norwich. So I'm sure he'll be quite highly captained and owned from the start. Obviously, he's already on 40% ownership as it is. You get into kind of Newcastle game week 4, that's pretty decent. And if he replicates last year, right, 6.6 points per game was absolutely ridiculous. Now, I put out a tweet earlier on Twitter before I made this video about how if I told you that no penalties would be given to Man United or Liverpool, would you still would you still choose Bruno Fernandes, or would you go for Mane instead? We're going to talk about it in just a minute. And Bruno Fernandes was still super popular. And to be fair, even if you took the number of penalties he got off that goal total, he would have still got 9 goals last year, along with his 14 assists. pretty decent return, right? That's 23 attacking returns altogether. And also, we know that he's nailed on, right? Minutes are a big thing, right? I probably don't factor them into my decisions enough, but they are important. You want your players on the pitch. You don't want someone that can come and do that job instead. You don't want someone that's always off after 60, 70 minutes. And I can tell you right now that unless there's an injury, Bruno Fernandes is pretty much playing 80 to 90 minutes in all of these games, right? Even though he's not at the time recording, so we're on the 29th of July, even though he's not back playing yet in pre-season, he will be very soon. He's one of those players that's just generally very fit. I don't think there's going to be a huge concern with him starting the season. He'll hit the ground running. The only thing I suppose with Man United is the first team haven't got too many minutes together yet, which may be a bit of a concern. And we don't yet know how Sancho is going to affect things either, right? Because Fernandes might be able to stay a bit deeper because Sanchez is more attacking on that right-hand side or left-hand side wherever he plays. That might affect the amount of goals he can get. On the flip side, he might arrive into the box a bit more often because he knows that Sancho can create the assist. He doesn't have to do it. Because we have seen some games where Fernandes kind of sits back a bit, edge of the area, just maybe a little bit deeper, and he's trying to play that pass. Whereas really, we want him in the box. Goals are just worth so much more. So I just think for the start of the season, it's difficult to go without him. I think you'd have to be absolutely sure there's going to be a reduction in those numbers. And his XG per 90 and his expected assist per 90, that's still pretty good. It works out to around 20-21 returns over the course of a 38-game-week season. And that's non-penalty. So once you factor in the penalties as well, he should easily get another 20-25 plus returns. And if he improves as a player, so if he's getting into the box more because Sancho, etc., whoever's on the kind of left-right side, and I know I've got to say etc. less, people have pointed that out, then we could see a point where he's getting a few less assists but a few more goals, and that would be the icing on the cake. But the beauty is he's 12 million. If you've already got Salah, then there's no other midfielder worth more than that anyway. So if it doesn't work out or he's not getting us further forward and Sancho's taking the brunt of the work and getting the returns, you can easily downgrade him. But it's looking difficult not to go with him from game week 1. Okay, so if we're saying that Salah's pretty much must-have, about as close as it gets anyway, and it's difficult to leave Bruno Fernandes out, then we need to either find a reason to have another premium midfielder, so a third one, try and find the funds to fit that in, or we need to find a reason to displace one of those and put one of these other players in instead. So I think Mane is a good starting point, right? The fixtures for Liverpool are probably the best out of all the players we're going to talk about in this video. I think they are slightly better than Man United. You get Norwich and Brentford, so 2 newly promoted clubs. And in Palace, Leeds and Burnley, you get 3 poor defences from last year. Of course, Leeds might improve. Palace have bought new players, new manager. They could improve. But we can only go on last season's numbers in a bit of an assumption. And I think they probably will still be some of the poorest defences in the league. So, Liverpool looking good. Now, he got 22 returns last year, 11 goals, 11 assists. That's actually one less than what Fernandes got, even if you remove the penalties, right? So Fernandes' season was really good last year, but that is a poor performance by Mane's standards compared to normal. So I had a look. He's had 31 starts last year in 35 matches, so 4 times he came off the bench, and that was exactly the same as the season before. The biggest difference was he only scored 11 goals last season. The season before that, he got 18. I've had a look at the expected data. I won't go into it in great detail, but basically Mane has been, since this data has kind of started to be recorded, he is someone that usually overperforms his expected goals. So last year he got 15 expected goals total, but only scored 11, so he underperformed. So that could be a little bit of regression, but it could just be a bad finishing slump, and this year he could kick back into gear and start getting those goals that we kind of become accustomed to with him. And I had a look at his kind of per 90 stats, and they're pretty similar over the last 4 seasons. If anything, last year was pretty much his best kind of tally for getting into the right positions and getting those chances. So Mane is definitely a potential option, like at the same price as Bruno Fernandes. You could take, and I have to say risk. I hate that word because it sounds so negative, and it kind of is, but it is a risk to go without Bruno Fernandes. A lot of it comes down to the penalties. Like I put this on Twitter earlier before I recorded. If I told you right now that Liverpool and Man United would get no, if this is hypothetical, they would get no penalties for the first 6 weeks, who would you go for? And Mane is slightly winning on that vote, and I kind of agree, to be honest. I just think his goal threat from open play is just so much higher than Bruno Fernandes, but we have to factor in the likes of Jota now as well, that he could take minutes off Mane. Whereas, like I said before, you know that Fernandes is getting 80 to 90 minutes. I don't know if we can say the same about Mane. Now, there are caveats to this, of course. If Firmino's not fit and we think that Jota's going to start up front, then Salah and Mane will almost certainly be the two that flank, and they'll play most of the minutes in the first few weeks. But at the time of recording, we're not quite sure about that. So we've got to keep an eye on that in pre-season. So I don't think I would personally or could go for Mane over Bruno Fernandes at the same price, and it's crazy to even think about Mane over Salah when Salah's got penalties. It's just a no-brainer. But I do think if I was betting on another premium midfielder to get close or even to beat them over that 6-period run or 6-fixture run, that Mane is probably where I would put my money. I think last year was just one of those seasons where things just don't quite go right. I don't think he's turned into a bad player, but it all depends on how you are as an FPL manager. Do you want to take that little bit of a risk at the start? Are you someone that doesn't want to go with what everyone else is doing? If you do, then I think Mane's the one, but it's just 12 minutes. If he was 11.5 or 11, there's a real genuine conversation to be had about including him in, but 12 million, it's difficult for the start of the season, I think. So I was quite surprised when I started making this video that De Bruyne is owned by 14.4% of all managers already. I appreciate there's still a few weeks to go and people's teams will change and they'll take players out, they'll put players in. And look, he might be lower than 14%, but I did think he would be a bit lower than that. I've not seen him talked about that much. Maybe he has been though, perhaps he has and I've just missed it. And this is obviously one of the best players in the league, right? We all know that. Most of these players are priced what they are because they are so good. But his underlying numbers, and I do like to use stats quite a bit, his expected goals and his expected assists are one of the best in the league for a player that gets regular minutes. So even though he's this creative player that creates loads of chances, gets loads of assists, he also gets into really good goal scoring positions as well. And the thing that you can say about De Bruyne versus other Man City players is he's pretty much nailed. Right? We know that he's pretty much going to play most games, like when he's fit and available. So last year, he played 25 times, 23 of those were starts. The season before, 35 times he played, 32 were starts. So as a general rule, when he's fit, he plays. So that's a big advantage. You do have to pay 12 million. But let's not forget, right, this is a player that the season before last, I'm just looking it up here, got, I think it was 251 points. Yeah, 251. So we know that he can do that if he gets the right minutes. Like back in 2017, 2018, he got 209 points. But as I always say, season totals don't usually matter. We're getting players in for a certain time or a certain period of fixtures, and then we might look to move them on. And I'm just wondering, as I am with most Man City players, is this fixture run the time to do it? Now, we know they are the most attacking team in the league. They will probably score the most goals or at least create the most amount of chances to score goals this season. So Spurs, new manager, new setup potentially. Will Kane be fit? They might not be the same team, but we don't know that. And I think this is the thing with De Bruyne and the fixtures he's got. We're not quite sure how it's going to go. Arsenal got a few new transfers to come in this year as well. Apparently they're still after James Maddison too. Leicester are always fairly difficult, but I don't really see Man City having a problem necessarily scoring against them at all. Chelsea is obviously the most difficult one on the list. So the fixture run is probably not as bad as it looks. Again, we know that Liverpool, Mane, etc. have got really good fixtures, and Man United are pretty decent too. But I just wouldn't necessarily overlook De Bruyne. And I think, again, if you're someone that wants to do something a little bit different, and I don't like doing things differently for the sake of it, but when you've got Kevin De Bruyne, best player in the league, arguably, against Norwich in game week 2, that's not different for the sake of it. If you can fit that into your transfer strategy and he's fit and available for that game, he is a brilliant captain, one of the best that week. It just so happens that in game week 2, there's some pretty good other fixtures as well. So Liverpool versus Burnley, you could just captain Salah or Mane. Man United have also got Southampton. So that's a potential potential captaincy too. And that's where the dilemma comes. But if you want to go kind of a bit more aggressive at the start, without just going for some player you've plucked out of thin air, then Kevin De Bruyne against Norwich is a genuinely good captaincy. You could just hold him for the first 2 and then maybe look to ship him or potentially keep him for Arsenal and Leicester as well and just see how things go. So if he's fit and available for the start of the season, I think De Bruyne is brilliant, and I would not be surprised if he comes away in game week 2 with a massive haul. Okay, so Son is really good. We know that. You look at his numbers, we know that he exceeds his expected goals quite often. He is just a very good finisher. 6.2 points per match, extremely good, right? I think there's kind of 3 things to think about. The first one's the fixtures. Man City at home probably shouldn't completely blindside you into just not going for him, because Wolves, Watford and Palace is a pretty good fixture run after that. But I would say that overall the first 6 fixtures are not that great. Not when you've got to play City and Chelsea, right? So that's something to consider. How quickly do you want to kind of get off him once you bring him in? So after game week 4, you're going to want to get rid, right? That's something to consider. And how many other transfers are you kind of booking in to do that? So fixtures is one thing. The second thing is price, right? So actually his price is pretty good. 10 million, I quite like that. I think he is the caliber of player that should have been that price a long time ago. One of the reasons he wasn't, by the way, is just because of his minutes. So when he first came to Spurs, he wasn't necessarily nailed on and played every week or every game week. So last season he got 3,119 minutes. That's the first time he's ever got above 2,500. The season before he got 2,400. Before that it was 2,000, 2,200, 2,000. So he never usually gets the minutes, but now he's going to be absolutely nailed. He's going to be playing week in, week out. But at 10 million, it's a bit of an awkward price point where there's not too many other players. So you almost have to be like kind of sure that you definitely want him, because if you don't, you've either got to find the money to upgrade, or yes, you can downgrade, but then what are you going to do with that money? How quickly can you spend it? And at the start of the season, for sure, you want to kind of spend as much money as you can as quickly as possible. So the price point's a bit awkward, but it wouldn't necessarily let me, or wouldn't necessarily put me off getting him. The third point is Harry Kane. Now, there is talk about whether he's going to move. He may do, he may not. We're just going to have to wait and find out. But the key kind of question is, does he become a worse option or a better option without Harry Kane? Now, the initial gut instinct, the reaction you'll get from most people will probably be to say he becomes a worse option. And if you look at last year, the way that Kane kind of adapted his game to become more creative, a lot of the assists that Son got were from Kane. We saw that combo work together so well. You would say that he's a worse option. Obviously, if they lose Harry Kane, someone's going to come into that spot. Either Son's going to play up front and they'll put someone else on the wing, or someone's going to come in as striker, and they're not going to be as good as Kane, but they'll find a way to kind of cover it, right? Someone else will become the creative outlet, etc. That's going to happen. So yes, there'll be a worse team without Kane, but it's not like they'll just, well, I assume they're not just going to fall apart completely. But Son is an option. Like, if Kane goes, then Son would probably be on penalty. So straight away, that's a massive tick in his box. He'd probably get 3 to 5 penalties minimum a season. And he's a very good finisher. I would expect him to do pretty well. So let's say he gets 3 to 4 extra goals on top of the 17 that he already scored last year. And also, I think he's the kind of player that could probably shoulder that burden of having to be the goal scorer. We've seen him play without Kane before, and we've seen him play in a striker role. And he's pretty damn good at it. I think he's a very complete forward player, whether it's left, whether it's through the middle, whatever it is. So I don't think Kane either going, like being transferred out from Spurs, or not being available would completely put me off having Son at all. Obviously, we'll have to keep an eye on pre-season. We'll have to see who Spurs bring in. We'll see how they're setting up. But the thing I like about it is he's already getting pre-season minutes. The same with Salah and Mane, by the way, which I didn't really talk about. They're already getting lots of pre-season minutes, lots of pre-season training. So is Son. So it doesn't really matter to me that he scored 2 goals. I know this guy can score goals, but the fact that he's already looking fairly sharp and already playing is pretty good to me. So I really like Son. It's just, how do you fit him in? Do you get him as well as 2 other premiums, or do you get him instead of one? And if you do that, it is quite a gamble, but we know the guy can score, and I think with or without Kane, he's a great option. Sterling's at a bit of a weird price point in that I don't think he's overpriced, to be honest, because, okay, yes, he didn't have a great season last year. He did play 2,500 minutes, by the way, which is quite a lot. It's not actually too dissimilar to his previous 3 seasons where he played 2,600, nearly 2,800, and then another 2,500 minute season. So as much as it felt like he didn't play, he did play, just didn't necessarily play too well. But he has had seasons where he scored like 18 goals, 17, 20 goals. So I wouldn't say he's overpriced. And obviously he's shown that he's still got it, right? He had a really good Euros as well. But at the same time, I feel like he should have been a bit cheaper just to create a conversation around possibly putting him into our teams at the start. Now, obviously FPL can't price players like that, because then if they start to do really well later on, they become must-own and it's too obvious to include them. But for that reason, I just think it's difficult to put him in. him, because if we think that Mahrez is already getting pre-season minutes, he's possibly going to take that spot on the right side. There's all this conversation about them still trying to buy Jack Grealish as well, so he would be one of the players that could play on the left as well as Sterling. There's just too much rotation to put him into our squad straight away. I think with Son, you can make a case. With Mane, you can make a case of putting him in ahead of one of the other players, De Bruyne as well, because of that Norwich fixture. But when it comes to Sterling, you just don't know if he's going to play. The minutes are encouraging, because he did get similar minutes to previous seasons where he's absolutely smashed it. But I need to see what happens with that Man City team at the start. And also, there was a quote last season, sorry, not last season, but it was over the Euros. And I think he was asked about why he was basically scoring for England, but not for Man City. And he said, honestly, there's a lot of different reasons why I haven't scored for my club. That's totally irrelevant now. I'm here with England. I'm enjoying my football. That's the most important thing. So something's happened, I would say, at the club. Like, I don't want to jump to conclusions because I don't know. But that kind of implies that something happened last year, whether it was personal reasons, whether it was something with the club, whether it was with Pep, I don't know. But we're going to have to wait and see how that kind of pans out this season. But he is one of those players, if you start to see him start regularly, of course there's going to be a point where Pep changes it up, because that's what Pep does. But he is a player that can score a good lot of goals and also be explosive, essentially. So I don't think he's probably one for game week 1. If we thought he was going to start game week 2, you could go for it, but I think he's just not going to get enough minutes over that first 6 fixtures to warrant a place. There we go. Let me know in the comments below who you're going with. Is it Salah and Fernandes? Are you looking at a different combo? Do you want to target that Norwich fixture for Man City? And what about Son? That 10 million price point is a little bit awkward, but he's such a good player with or without Kane. I think he's going to do absolutely fine. So let me know below. Give it a like if you enjoyed it, and hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already signed up for Fantrax, there is a link in the description below. Just click that, create your account, and if you're ready and available for 7 o'clock on Sunday, leave me a comment below saying that you've created your free Fantrax account, and I will pick some people at random to come and do that draft with me. And then on the next video, when I talk about Fantrax, I'll show you how the draft went and which players I picked. Hopefully I get one of the #1 picks. So yeah, link in the description below. I'll leave it there. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Please do give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon.